I remember like it was yesterday, pulling up to school and saying, "What's up, Father?" and him saying, "Heaven, boy." I remember him telling the story of the touch of the Master's hand, and that the Master, God, is constantly molding us and gently asking us to follow his path, even at this very moment. He taught me that we find God when we focus on the least, the last, and the lost. While I am grateful for our city's economic success and our gains in public safety, I am most grateful for our success in helping the forgotten and the marginalized. Homelessness is exploding across our country. In Miami, we have taken a different approach. Our homeless population, which peaked at 6,000, as of our last census, is at 608, and we will not stop. We will not stop until we get to zero, I can tell you that. We did it by applying Christian values and by joining hands with churches across the city and faith-based organizations like Hermanos de la Calle, who've taken over 1,000 people off the streets and placed them in permanent housing. I like to talk about how we reduced poverty in the last 20 years by 50%. Because we were compassionate and found creative ways to create affordable housing, remove food deserts, and create pathways to prosperity for our homeless by teaching them vocational skills, giving our children savings accounts, and raising private sector dollars so that all young adults on Pell Grants in my city can go to college for free. Like I said, predominantly private sector dollars, almost no public sector dollars. In today's America, we need to lead with loving truth in a world of soft lies. We need Christians who speak clearly and calmly in a time of confusion and despair. And we need Christians who lead and who love courageously, even to those who persecute us and prosecute us. Our country is bruised and battered right now, but our faith is strong. Our values are under relentless attack, but our faith is strong. We face oppression and persecution, but our faith is strong. And all of us here today, I promise you, have been attacked, but our faith is strong. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for keeping the faith, for keeping us strong. Thank you for keeping America one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Faith and Freedom Coalition Director of Legislative Affairs, Patrick Pertell.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Very good. It is my pleasure to be able to introduce to you a gentleman that I worked with at the Department of Justice in the Bush administration, where he spent 6 years as one of the most effective U.S. attorneys in the nation. He went on to become the 55th governor of New Jersey, where not only did he have a hostile state legislature, he was able to move through some of the most impressive fiscal reforms the state has ever seen, both on taxes and on spending. A champion for charter schools, a champion for school choice. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Governor Chris Christie.
Good morning. First of all, thank you all for being here and for loving our country enough to be here. And I thought this morning the most appropriate issue to discuss is the issue of character. And I want to start You can tell I'm getting older. I have to put these on. But I wanted to start with Romans chapter 5, verses 3 to 5. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and it is character that produces hope. Character is tested most when you're challenged, when you're under duress. And believe me, being a conservative Republican in the state of New Jersey is duress. 1 million more registered Democrats than Republicans, a Democratic legislature for every day of my governorship, and the New York and Philadelphia media market every day. There is no doubt that as a conservative Republican in New Jersey, you're challenged. And when I was one of only 3 people, 3 Republicans, in the last 30 years to beat an incumbent Democratic governor, they told me there was no chance I could win. And one of the biggest reasons the press said I couldn't win was because I ran as what I am, an unabashedly pro-life Republican. Now, what does that mean once you become governor of New Jersey? What it means is that for 8 years, they sent me Planned Parenthood funding in New Jersey, and for 8 years, I vetoed it, and we sustained every one of those vetoes. No Planned Parenthood funding for 8 years. And being pro-life, I would suggest to all of you, has to be longer than the 9 months in the womb. Every life, I was taught, is a precious gift from God. And that life and its gift doesn't end when the child is born, it only begins. And our need to protect that life only begins then. And so that's why when I look at children across our state and now across our nation who live in an educational system that gives them no chance and no hope to ever lift themselves out of poverty, that is a sin. It is a sin against what God gave them in the potential that he put inside of every little boy and little girl born into this country. And that's why we opened more charter schools than at any time in New Jersey history. That's why we gave parents parental choice. And what we need in this country is to radically change the education system so that every parent, regardless of how much money you make, gets to choose where their child goes and what they learn. That's going to be the defining issue of the next 20 years in our country. And when I was U.S. Attorney, I worked with Congressman Chris Smith to make sure that human traffickers were prosecuted, not only in New Jersey, but all across our region. If we are going to stand up for the preciousness of life, we must stand up for the young women that are trafficked into this country, into the sex trade. Those people who profit from those young women need to be prosecuted and put in jail for the rest of their lives. I did the biggest one of those cases in the country's history. And character is important and has been important in every one of the moments in our country's history. Think about it. If in 1776, Washington and Adams and Jefferson and Franklin had decided to negotiate with King George and not have the character and the courage it took to stand up for independence, which they knew had freedom and liberty, we'd be a smaller country. If in 1861, Abraham Lincoln decided to give the South away, rather than stand up and have the character to say that a house divided against itself cannot stand, we would not have the country that we have today. In 1941, if Franklin Roosevelt hadn't said that Holocaust around the world and Nazi domination was something the United States was unwilling to live with, well, we would have been a smaller country today, not the leader of the world that we became. And in 1981, if Ronald Reagan had been willing to live with a Soviet empire that killed and discriminated against its own people, that squashed its faith, then we would not have seen 9 years later the falling of the Berlin Wall and now a free and democratic Europe that helps to support the hope and the faith of each and every one of those people. Our faith teaches us, at least my Catholic faith teaches us, that character doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean that you're free of sin or faults. But what I believe my faith requires of me is when I do sin, when I do make mistakes, when people who work for me do the same, that I must admit it, that I must take responsibility, that part of getting forgiveness, whether it's from God or whether it's from the people who elected you when you make mistakes, is to first accept that responsibility and ask for forgiveness. That's what character really is. Because beware, everybody, of a leader who never makes mistakes. Beware of a leader who has no faults. Beware of a leader who says that when something goes wrong, it's everybody else's fault. And he goes and he blames those people for anything that goes wrong, but when things go right, everything is to his credit. Now, there are a lot of people who wonder, after I was the first candidate to endorse Donald Trump in 2016, the very first, after he made me chairman of his transition, after he made me chairman of his opioid and drug abuse commission, after, and this one will keep you up at night, everybody, after I played Hillary Clinton in debate prep. You won't be able to sleep thinking about that one tonight. And after I played Joe Biden in debate prep in 2020, why am I running for president of the United States? I'm running because he's let us down. He has let us down because he's unwilling. He's unwilling to take responsibility for any of the mistakes that were made, any of the faults that he has, and any of the things that he's done. And that is not leadership, everybody. That is a failure of leadership. And you can boo all you want. But here's the thing. Our faith teaches us that people have to take responsibility for what they do. People have to stand up and take accountability for what they do. And I cannot stand by, and as soon as I've started to be critical, after all of that, and after you offered me White House Chief of Staff, now what he does is call me names and belittle me. And I will tell you, if all you do is disagree with someone, and in return you get that kind of treatment, I've joined a great list of Americans like Rex Tillerson and Jim Mattis and Mark Esper and Mick Mulvaney and John Kelly and all the rest. And you can love him all you want, but I will tell you that doing those kind of things makes our country smaller. It makes our country smaller, and it makes us lesser. During the Revolutionary War, Abigail Adams asked her husband John if they were going to win the war. And here's what John said. He said, I can't guarantee success in the war, but I can guarantee something better, that we deserve it. Ladies and gentlemen, you never know what's going to come across the desk of the President of the United States. It's not a litmus test of boxes checked. You need to know what's in here. We need to once again, as people of faith, put character first. If I'm President of the United States, I will put character first. I love each and every one of you for what you contribute to our country. I love that you are people of faith. I am too. And let's make America a country that cares once again about character and faith. Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Chairman of the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition, Steve Scheffler.
Good morning again. I am proud and honored to introduce my United States Senator Joni Ernst. She was elected to the U.S. Senate, replacing a 30-year far-left Democrat in 2014. She was elected vice chair of the Senate Republican Conference. She was the first female combat veteran in the U.S. Senate. She served in the United States Army and the Iowa National Guard in the Iraq War. She has supported fetal personhood amendment, legislation to defund Planned Parenthood. She is the greatest. Please welcome my great U.S. Senator, Joni Ernst.
Okay, folks, let's get fired up. Good morning. It's great to be with so many patriots. Thank you all for coming out today. So, folks, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party of today don't know the difference between a man or a woman. What? And they clearly don't understand what the word secure means when it comes to our country. This utter confusion is causing chaos across the United States, from our southern border all the way to competitive sports. Right now, Joe Biden is working overtime to allow biological males to share spaces with females and compete in women's sports. Doors that were opened over 50 years ago are being slammed in the faces of girls across this country because of the left's radical gender ideology. Girls' locker rooms have become a battleground. Many of you probably know my friend, Riley Gaines Barker. Yes! She's a 12-time NCAA All-American female athlete who was forced to compete against a biological male, Leah Thomas, in the 200 freestyle for the national championship. The two tied. They tied, folks, for 5th place, with Thomas taking home the trophy. The NCAA told Riley it was necessary for photo purposes, and that Riley would get her trophy in the mail. Yes, boo. Thank you. Folks, Leah Thomas is a 6'4" biological male who swam on the men's team at the University of Pennsylvania for 3 years before switching to the women's team for his final year. Man, you might feel like a woman, but you're not. Thankfully, last year, my friend and fellow patriot, Governor Kim Reynolds of our great state of Iowa, yes, protected girls' sports across the great state of Iowa from elementary all the way to the collegiate level. And in the U.S. Senate, I am proud to help lead the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. Under our bill, any athletic program that receives federal funds and allows a biological male to participate in competitions designated for women or girls would be in violation of federal law and held accountable. We here in this room must continue to stand up, protect our young girls, and ensure that they are not pushed off of the podium. Folks, Title IX is the law of the land, whether Democrats like it or not. Our female athletes deserve fairness. They deserve safety and the ability to win top scholarships and titles. No amount of harassment from the radical left will stop us from standing up for the truth and for what is right. So, folks, I mentioned securing our nation. So let's talk a little bit about our border. Don't you think it's time to secure our southern border? Joe Biden's refusal to act is allowing cartels to smuggle deadly drugs into our countries, into communities all across the United States, risking our national security and costing taxpayers billions of dollars for nothing. On day one in office, Joe Biden canceled the construction of the wall along our southern border, calling it, quote, a waste of money. Ironically, folks, his decision not to build the wall is the real waste of money. Right now, all of you as taxpayers are spending millions of dollars for contractors to babysit piles of metal sitting in the desert. Since pulling the plug, we have been paying contractors about $50 million a year to watch over unused materials. That's right, we're being billed to protect piles of rusting materials that were supposed to be used to protect the American people. And since Joe Biden came into office, we've had 5.5 million illegal immigrants that have crossed over the US-Mexico border. We have 190 Americans dying every single day to fentanyl. That's about the equivalent of a 9/11 every 15 days. So we've got to do it. Let's put these border materials to use, stop them from collecting dust in the desert. Let's build the wall along our southern border. So, folks, right now, Iowa is a hotbed of activity. We've got all kinds of candidates coming through, a lot of political tourism in the great state of Iowa. But Iowa Republicans are fired up to maintain our first-in-the-nation caucus. And just a couple of weeks ago, great event. We had a roast and ride in Iowa, all kinds of candidates coming out, Iowans piling out of their homes, coming out to support who we hope will be the next candidate in the caucuses and in the race for the White House. What we know, folks, is that we must fire Joe Biden. And I have full confidence that we will take back the White House in 2024. We need all of you patriots stepping up. This is our mission, folks, is to get America on the right track. We are counting on you in 2024. So God bless you all, folks. God bless our great United States of America. Let's do it, folks. 2024. 2024. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the freest state in these United States.
The cure cannot be worse than the actual issue.
You can't run your society into the ground. Kids need to be in school. People need to be able to earn a living.
Major move by Governor Ron DeSantis. The governor announcing Florida is now reopening.
Florida got it right, and the lockdown states got it wrong.
Tonight, a sweeping elections reform bill is now law here in Florida.
Your vote is going to be cast with integrity and transparency, and this is a great place for a democracy.
Governor Ron DeSantis sailed to victory, beating former Governor Charlie Crist.
DeSantis winning 50% of all Latino voters in the state of Florida.
Thank you for a historic landslide victory.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Parental Rights in Education bill.
We not only know that parents have a right to be involved, we insist that parents have a right to be involved.
Governor Ron DeSantis ending Disney's decades-long reign of self-governance.
We fight the woke and the corporations. We refuse to surrender to the woke mob. This state is where woke goes to die.
A major GOP plan for universal school vouchers, now law in the state of Florida.
The state of Florida is #1 when it comes to education.
Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law the heartbeat bill. The law bans abortions after the moment of gestational heartbeat.
I'm willing to sign great life legislation. That's what I've always said I would do.
I can tell you in the state of Florida, I'll be holding the line. I'll be standing my ground. I won't back down, and I have only begun to fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of One More Child, Jerry Hague.
Over the past 5 years, I have seen up close the bold leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis. I've seen how lives have been changed. I see how families have been strengthened, and I've seen how futures can be brighter. Governor Ron DeSantis gets things done. He is a man of faith, and you can see that faith in his priorities, in his appointments, and in his policies. Governor DeSantis kept our church doors open during COVID. He personally led the passing of the heartbeat bill in Florida to protect our unborn children. But you know that so many of the problems that we face today aren't just matters of public policy, they are matters of the heart. I know this man's heart, and I know how he and Casey lead with their faith. Governor DeSantis is a fearless leader. He is wise, he is strong, and he is a champion for our faith and for our families. So please join me in welcoming to the stage that leader, my governor, and the next president of the United States, Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thank you so much. God bless you all. Are you ready to work together so that we can send Joe Biden back to his basement in Delaware where he belongs? I'm so happy to be here. We see the problems in this country. You see the economy where you pay more for daily necessities like groceries. Meanwhile, the people in this town, with all the spending, the debt, and the printing that's been done, you know, they're living high on the hog. You see a southern border that's wide open. You see illegal aliens pouring in and massive amounts of deadly narcotics coming in. You see cities that have been overrun with crime, places that have been hollowed out like San Francisco. And we see a federal government whose agencies have been weaponized against their fellow Americans, including people of faith. And underlying all that is the fact that the left is lighting the fire of a cultural revolution all across this land. The fire smolders in our schools, it smolders in corporate boardrooms, it smolders in the halls of restore sanity to this nation. We will return normalcy to our communities, and we will reinstate integrity across institutions. This is a time for clarity. This is a time to stand for truth. This is a time to proudly put on the full armor of God. Now, what's called for right now is leadership. And leadership means that you know what's the right thing to do. You have your sights fixated on what true north is. You don't let people divert you off course, the media, the polls, none of that. You follow through and you get things done. And I'm happy to say that's exactly what we've done in Florida. That's exactly what we will do as president. When the world went mad during COVID, when common sense suddenly became an uncommon virtue, the state of Florida stood as a citadel of freedom and a refuge of sanity for citizens all across this country. We refuse to let our state descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's freedoms were curtailed and their livelihoods were destroyed. No, we protected the right of people to worship in church. We protected people's freedom, their ability to work, businesses to operate, and made sure our kids could be in school every single day in person. In short, we chose freedom over Fauciism, and we are better off for having done so. We also lead in standing up for the protection of our children. And it's sad to say, but in the cultural moment we find ourselves in, our children are being targeted for indoctrination in schools and programming, everything under the sun. In the state of Florida, when we saw that happening, when people wanted to put gender ideology in the schools, we drew a line in the sand and said, no, not on our watch. We are going to stand with the rights of parents. It is inappropriate for a teacher to tell a second grader that they may have been born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. And so we made sure to enact that in the law. Now, there are a lot of people in Florida that love that we did that. The parents loved it regardless of party because they want to focus school on the basics. They don't want schools to be tools of indoctrination. The left didn't like what we did. The media didn't like what we did. And there happened to be a company you may have heard of in Central Florida that didn't like what we did, named Disney. And people said, you know, they're so powerful when they lean in on an issue in Florida, they always get their way. There's no way that the governor is going to be able to withstand that. And so this parents' rights bill is going to end up crashing and burning. And, you know, I know that they ran things in Florida for a long time. But all I can say is we run the state of Florida. We don't subcontract out to woke corporations in Burbank, California. So here we stand. And we signed the legislation. And we also ensured that if they're getting legacy benefits where they had their own government, that was in the 60s, I didn't do that, they were treated better than any person or company in the entire state of Florida, and yet they were signing up for the sexualization of children. Not just with this bill, but they've admitted it in their own programming. And so as a father of three, that's not something that sits well with me. So we had to make the decision to say, you know, we are not going to put you on a pedestal in this state. And so we ended Disney's self-governing status in the state of Florida. And I know, and the sad thing is, no, I know, the sad thing is a lot of these Republicans are siding with Disney and they're attacking me. And here's what I will say. We oppose seeks to rob our children of their innocence. And on those principles, there will be no compromise. We will fight the woke corporations. And what it all comes down to at the end of the day is we believe that parents have the right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. And we've enacted legislation to that effect. We've even empowered parents with the ability to know what curriculum is being used in their kids' school and to blow the whistle when things are inappropriate. And here's what they found. Unfortunately, And I think Florida is probably way better than a lot of other states, but even in Florida, you know, they have found pornography in the schools. So the media will say, if you get the pornography out, that that's somehow a book ban, which is a total hoax. People can buy, adults can buy books, but you have to choose what's appropriate to be in a school, what's appropriate for a classroom. You're making a decision, somebody's trying to make a decision to use tax dollars to put pornographic materials, and that's wrong. We did an event to highlight this. We called it Exposing the Book Ban Hoax, but before I talked, before the parents came up, we just played on the video screen exactly what the parents had objected to. The news stations covering our press conference had to cut their feed because they said it was too graphic to air. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? And I know we see debates right now about the ability of women to compete fairly in sports, and people like Riley Gaines are standing up for doing what's right, and I appreciate all that. But in Florida, we took care of this years ago. We signed legislation that says every girl, every women athlete in the state of Florida has the right to compete with fairness and with integrity in their sports. And as the father of 2 daughters, I want my daughters to be able to participate with fairness and integrity. And yes, when you have someone swim on the men's team for 3 years and switch to the women's team and somehow win the championship, that took a championship away from a woman swimmer. That is taking opportunities away from girls. No question about that. But even more than that, when the NCAA crowns that swimmer the women's champion, they're not only taking away opportunities for other women athletes, they are asking us to be complicit in a fraud. And that I refuse to do. We have also taken action to prohibit puberty blockers and gender surgeries in the state of Florida for minors. It is mutilation. It is wrong, and it has no place in a free society. We're proud that we've been able to and will continue to stand for religious liberty. And yes, we had to do that during COVID when you had local governments trying to crack down on people that wanted to attend church. We filed an executive order saying churches are essential activity and have a right to operate. We've also taken action to ensure that athletes have the right and sports teams have a right to say prayers before games, and also to have a mandatory moment of silence in our schools so that students can pray before they start the school day. My government in Florida has enlisted the faith community into everything we do. When we work to help less fortunate people, and my wife has a great program called Hope Florida, we know that just giving somebody a check from a bureaucracy is not going to ultimately change the trajectory of their lives. So what have we done? We've created something called the Care Portal, where people in need can say what they need, but then groups in the community, businesses, nonprofit, and yes, our churches and synagogues are able to connect. They can help the people, and guess what? Once they are in the hands of people who care, once they have an ability to not just receive statecraft but soulcraft, we never see them come to the government office again for help. They are on the road to self-sufficiency. So we've embraced the faith community, and we know that it works to embrace the faith community. We've also empowered parents to be able to send their kid to the school of their choice, including religious schools. You have universal school choice in the state of Florida, the largest expansion of school choice in American history. We were proud to be able to get that done. We also said when I ran for governor that I would be the most pro-Israel governor in the country, and we have delivered on that promise. We stand with the state of Israel. We have fought companies who have tried to stigmatize Israel through things like BDS and we've put them on our dink list, and we've gotten companies like Airbnb to back down, because we understand places like Judea and Samaria are historical, biblical Jewish lands. They are not occupied territory. It is disputed territory, but those have a strong connection to the Jewish people going back thousands and thousands of years, and all you have to do is open up your Bible and start reading to see that. So as president, we will ensure that we have an ironclad Israel-U.S. relationship. They are our ally, and we need to act like it. We also understand the importance of leading on the courts. When I became governor of Florida, our state Supreme Court in Florida was perhaps the most liberal Supreme Court anywhere in the United States. Well, we've now been able to make 7 appointments to that court, and Florida now has the most conservative Supreme Court anywhere in these United States, and we got more work to do. As president, I will nominate and appoint justices to the Supreme Court in the mold of Justices Clarence Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito. We will also stand and defend them against scurrilous attacks that you're seeing in the media and by left-wing groups. The left knows they have lost control of the court, and they don't like it. If they're able to sweep in 24, they're going to pack the U.S. Supreme Court with liberal justices. You may have 13 people on the Supreme Court after they get done with it, and they will install a liberal majority. So they're hard at this effort of trying to lay the groundwork for that by delegitimizing our great conservative justices. And let me just say, I stand with Justice Thomas, I stand with Justice Alito in the face of these attacks. They are wrong. We have also delivered in Florida on promoting a culture of life. And that means signing the heartbeat bill into law that protects unborn children when there's a detectable heartbeat. It was the right thing to do. Don't let anyone tell you it wasn't. But we understand that being pro-life starts there, but it doesn't end there. In the state of Florida, we've enacted family-friendly policies. We now have the elimination of all sales tax on all baby items. Diapers, wipes, cribs, strollers, clothes, you name it, that's in the bag. Now, my wife and I have a 6', 5, and a 3-year-old, and when I signed this into law recently, I had a big smile on my face. I came home, and she deadpanned to me, because our kids are out of diapers now, and she said, "Why didn't you do this 4 years ago?" Well, you know, we did a lot over these 4 years, but we're really proud of that, and we're proud of all the support that we've offered for foster care, for adoptions, and for single moms. It's important that we walk the walk and just not talk the talk when it comes to right to life. So here's, I think, where we find ourselves. You need the leadership, because for far too long, we've had a lot of Republicans that get into office, and they're almost like potted plants. They don't want to lead. They want to follow polls, have their finger in the wind. They do not want to take on fights that are going to lead to the media attacking them or the left attacking them. And so what they end up doing is, yeah, you know, they'll do a tax cut here, something there, but they tend to defer to the media. They defer to corporations. And what that means in this day and age is that the left will win, because they're going on all fronts. They're pushing their agenda through the schools. They're pushing their agenda through corporate America. They're pushing their agenda through an unaccountable bureaucracy. If all you say you're going to do is sit there and only deal with taxes and certain spending issues, then you're giving away the game. So you need full spectrum leadership. You need to understand that the threats to freedom are not limited to what happens in an election or even in the halls of government, but it extends far broader than that. We understand that in Florida, and that's why we've become the free state of Florida, because we've protected this freedom all across the board. We need to get busy with this in Washington, D.C. As president, we will reverse Biden's disastrous economic policies. We're going to stop spending this country into oblivion. The state of Florida, we have millions of more people than New York State does now, and our budget is half the size of New York State. When there's excessive spending, I veto it. Our debt is the second lowest per capita in the country. Don't tell me it can't be done. We're not destined to plunge this country into debt-ridden destitution, and so we need a new way of thinking. We also need to unleash all of our domestic energy here in this country. We have resources. Don't force people into electric cars. Don't force them to use windmills. Let's use what we have. It's better for your pocketbook, but it's also better for our national security. And I will finally be the president to bring the issue of our open southern border to a conclusion. I've heard about this since I've been an adult. For decades, we've complained about the open border. We've complained about everything that's happening. Now is the time to act. On day one, we declare a national emergency. We mobilize all assets, including the military. Yes, we build a border wall, but we stop the invasion, and we hold the drug cartels accountable for the carnage that they are causing in this country. We will also usher in a reckoning for the federal government's disastrous COVID-19 policies. Fauciism was wrong. Fauciism was destructive. Fauciism has hurt millions and millions of people, the businesses that were lost, the kids who got locked out of school, the people who were forced to take a jab that they did not want just to put food on their table. And if we don't have accountability for this, if we're not willing to look back and say what went wrong and hold people accountable accordingly, they are going to try to do this in the future. And I can tell you this, when we get in there and bring accountability, we're going to do it because this can never happen in our country ever again. We must be rooted in truth, and accordingly, that must mean we must fight ideologies that are hostile to truth. And the woke mind virus represents an attack on truth itself. And because woke represents a war on truth, we will wage a war on woke ideology. And some people say, not to worry about woke, that it's not something that we should be concerned of. First of all, having a society that's rooted in truth is important. Don't tell me that a man can get pregnant and expect me to accept that. I will not accept that, and we cannot have a society that accepts that. But even aside from that, don't think that woke doesn't have an impact on your life and will really be able to have a devastating impact if it takes hold even further. When woke takes our economy by things like ESG, the average person becomes poorer as a result of that. When woke overtakes the education system, the average student becomes dumber as a result of that. When woke overtakes our criminal justice system, like it has in San Francisco, like it has in Los Angeles, the average person becomes less safe in their communities as a result in it. Don't tell me it doesn't affect people's lives. I was just in San Francisco. I saw, in 20 minutes on the ground, people defecating on the sidewalk. I saw people using fentanyl. I saw people smoking crack right there in the open, right there on the street. It was a civilization in decay, and it was as a result of leftist ideology, pursued leftist policies. So this is a battle that we must win. And my pledge is this: we will fight the woke in the schools. We will fight the woke in the corporations. We will fight the woke in the halls of government. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. We are going to leave woke ideology in the dustbin of history where it belongs. And part of the reason we have to do that is because when it affects institutions, it corrodes the integrity of those institutions. And, I'm somebody who, I was a blue-collar kid. My parents were working folks. I worked minimum wage jobs as a kid to get through school and all this. And I actually put myself in a position where I had a lot of lucrative opportunities, but this was after September 11th. And I felt that we don't have a draft. I should do my part, however small, to serve in the military. So I volunteered to serve in the U.S. Navy. We volunteered to serve in Iraq, and we deployed to Fallujah and Ramadi and a lot of those places. I was attached to SEAL Team 1, and I was proud of doing that, proud of the people I served alongside, proud to have worn the cloth of our country. And I think a lot of veterans feel that way. And even though I had a lot of other opportunities, doing that for a cause greater than yourself is a satisfaction money just can't buy. And it pains me to this day to run into veterans now, because this never used to happen, but I run into veterans now who say they would not advise their kids or grandkids to join today's military. They say they see it's gone woke, they see that they're promoting gender ideology and other types of social experimentation. That has caused morale to go down, and it has caused recruiting to plummet. And I can promise you this, on day one as Commander-in-Chief, we will rip the woke out of our military. We will get it focused back on the mission, and we will make sure that it's something that people are proud of again. We will also go about the business on day one of reconstitutionalizing this out-of-control federal government. Our founding fathers created a constitution with 3 branches of government. They did not create a 4th branch of government, an administrative state that does what it wants and is not constitutionally accountable to we the people. And yet, that's what has developed. A lot of the most important things in people's daily lives now, what kind of car you can drive, what kind of energy you can use, whether you can have a gas stove, those are decided not by your elected representatives, but by nameless, faceless bureaucrats deep in the bowels of Washington, D.C., who are imposing rules on our country. That is not the way the Constitution is designed. We're going to discipline that bureaucracy, and we're going to return the government to its rightful owners, we, the American people. And you need to do it because when you look at how government has been weaponized, if you're a pro-life activist, you may end up having FBI agents storm your house, even when you said that you would surrender voluntarily. And that power is being applied in ways that they're going after disfavored groups. The government has been weaponized. This is not something that the Founding Fathers would be surprised about. They knew that if you allowed power to accumulate in a capital city like they have in Washington, if you don't hold these agencies constitutionally accountable, human nature being what it is, they will abuse their power. And for far too long, both Republicans and Democrats have looked the other way. They've said, oh, we can't do anything about it. We're not allowed to fire people. I can tell you this, when I get in there's going to be a new sheriff in town. You're going to have a new FBI director day one. You're going to see the Justice Department turned inside out. We are not going to sit idly by and let them mobilize power against people of faith and people with whom they disagree. For far too long, this bureaucracy has imposed its will on us. It's about time we impose our will on it, and that's what we're going to do. But here's the deal. None of this matters if we don't win. There is no substitute for victory. We cannot continue with the culture of losing where we lose winnable races. We have 49 Republican senators right now. We should have 55 Republican senators, and we would have been able to stop a lot of Biden's nonsense if we had that. In Florida, we've created a culture of winning. When I became governor, Florida was a 1-point state, and I won by 32,000 votes. People told me in a close state, you got to trim your sails, you can't be bold, just don't make waves. I understand why they said that. But I rejected that advice. I earned 100% of the executive power, and I set out to use it. And we advanced a bold agenda. We delivered fantastic results, and fast forward 4 years later, we didn't win by 32,000 votes. We won by over 1.5 million votes, the largest landslide in Florida Republican gubernatorial history. And we weren't just winning Republicans. We won over 60% of Hispanics. We won independents by 18%. Miami-Dade County, 2.8 million people. Hillary Clinton had won it by 30 points in 2016. We won it by double digits in 2022. We have a majority of people out there who believe in our message. They will get with us. We just got to make sure that they understand this election is about two things: holding Joe Biden accountable for his failures and us offering a better path forward, a positive vision for how we restore America to greatness. And we have to do this. I think about why I'm motivated to run. And look, I've got kids. You have kids, grandkids. We want to leave America better for the next generation than we found it. That's kind of our birthright that we have to do that. And I'm motivated by that. But I'm also motivated by this. I know throughout our history, generations of Americans have sacrificed so that we could live in a free society. And I'm reminded of President Reagan saying freedom is only one generation away from extinction. It's not passed along in the bloodstream. I used to think that was an exaggeration. Having lived through the last 4 or 5 years, I'll tell you, freedom is fragile in this country. Do not take freedom for granted. And when freedom comes under attack, it's our responsibility to stand up and fight for it. Our founding fathers understood this. When they met in Philadelphia to create the Constitution, they had studied the history of every republic and the history of mankind because they wanted to draw lessons about what they needed to do. And the one lesson they drew from all those republics throughout history was this: every one of them had failed. And so they understood it fell to the United States of America to determine once and for all, can people really govern themselves? Can we have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from the government? That we live under a rule of law, not the rule of individual men? Or was mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they understood that it would fall to this country to answer that question once and for all. And when Benjamin Franklin walked out of that convention, he was actually asked, would you give us a monarchy or a republic? He said a republic if you can keep it. Because he understood this is not something that's foreordained. We'll have a free society as long as enough people want to fight for a free society. And so I'm motivated by the people that have fought for that. You look just across the Potomac here. I used to fly into Reagan Airport back in the day, and there was one route you could take that took you flush parallel to the National Mall. So if you looked out the left side of the plane, you saw really close, beautiful views of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, the Washington Monument, then up perched on the hill, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building, and you felt a sense of pride because that's symbolic of the ideas and the values that have made this country great. But what I realized after doing that trip a few times, the best monuments were not actually out the left side of the plane. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw small, nondescript monuments arranged in an orderly fashion over rolling hills in a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me, you can have the best Constitution in the world, you could have the best Declaration of Independence in the world, you could have the greatest presidents in the world, other great leaders, but ultimately, if you don't have people that are willing throughout history to stand up, put on that uniform, risk their lives, and indeed give that last full measure of devotion in service to a greater cause, then none of that's going to amount to very much. And so we not only owe it to our kids and grandkids to stand up and fight, we owe it to those who have fought for us in the past. We must do justice to their legacy. And so our task is very simple. No excuses. Let's get this done. I will tell you this, if I'm the nominee, you guys can book your ticket for January 20th, 2025. The west side of the Capitol, we will be out there with that left hand on the Bible. We'll have the right hand in the air. We'll take the oath as the 47th president, and we will get to work on day one to restore this country to the greatness that it deserves. I thank you all. God bless you, and God bless these United States of America. Thank you so much.
The Executive Director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Timothy Head.
Thank you so much, Governor DeSantis, and certainly thank you so much to all of our guests and our speakers this morning. Was that encouraging? Did y'all like that? We're about 40% through this weekend's conference. How about that, huh? So listen, while I still have you, I need you to pay attention really quick. There's a couple of things that I want to cover for you, and then we're going to, I know that some of y'all might have had to skip breakfast to get into the room on time. We'll let you get some lunch. But listen, tonight I want to make everybody aware, I mentioned yesterday at our town hall that we're going to actually screen the movie Sound of Freedom in this room tonight. Jim Caviezel's new movie that actually debuts in theaters in about 2 weeks. But we're pleased to have a pre-screening of it tonight right here. We'll be watching it on these screens. 7:30 in here, so when we finish our breakout sessions this afternoon, you can go and get a bite to eat, and then you can head back in here, and we'll start at 7:30. It runs a little over an hour and a half, so we should have you out by 9:30, and you can all get your beauty sleep for tomorrow. Secondly, I want you also to be very aware that tomorrow morning, just like this morning, we're starting almost exactly at 9 o'clock. So tomorrow is not the day to sleep in, okay? You can sleep in on Sunday, on Monday, when you get back home. But we need everybody in their seats bright and early on Saturday morning as well. Again, back in here, we're going to have a full lineup. We're pleased to say that we're actually going to have 4 more presidential candidates that are going to be with us tomorrow morning. Who is aware that former Congressman Will Hurd just announced yesterday that he's running for president. And we just were able to finalize an arrangement that he actually, on quick notice, is going to jump on a plane and join us tomorrow morning to share more about his own personal story and vision. We'll hear the same from Nikki Haley, from Larry Elder, and also from Perry Johnson. We're excited to have those, plus several other wonderful guests and friends like Judge Jeanine Pirro. Any Jeanine Pirro fans here? So tomorrow morning is going to be another full, exciting, and I think encouraging morning.